Good evening to you all.
Good evening, sir.
I wish I could speak in Tamil, but unfortunately I can't deliver a lecture. I can manage a dining table conversation in Tamil, but not beyond that. So you'll forgive me for that. It is a great pleasure and honor to be present this evening. Pleasure for the reason my association with this city, what today is called Chennai. Maybe some centuries back it was called Chennai, in between it was Madras for 3 centuries. I was a student of Madras University. Those days it was still Madras. The name Chennai did not start its reinvention here. So in view of my personal association with this city, it's always been a pleasure. I have a lot of friends here, relations, and old memories, wonderful memories of my youth, my student days. It was the city which, apart from anything else, gave me an opportunity to listen to two great democrats of this country simultaneously on the same day. Late Mr. C. Rajagopalachari and late Mr. Nani Palkhiwala. Most probably that was the last public appearance of late Mr. Rajagopalachari. When Mr. Palkhiwala was in Madras, I'm used to that expression, you'll forgive me for not saying Chennai. When Mr. Palkhiwala was here in connection with some case, sometime in February or March 1972, I was in the final year, just getting ready for my final year examination. He was invited by the Law College, of which I was a student, to address the students. And the meeting, to preside over that meeting, late Mr. Rajagopalachari was requested. I think if I remember right, he died in December 1973, 25th December 24th December 1973, just about a year before his death. So we had to literally carry him to the first floor of the veteran hall where the meeting took place in the first floor. Ground floor was occupied by the library. We had to literally carry him in a chair to the first floor. This is this city which gave me that opportunity. It was one of those historical occasions. It's a pleasure to be here. It is an honor for the reason that this city which produced giants like Rajagopalachari, or this state which produced giants like Rajagopalachari, and many more, not possible to mention every name, chose to invite me to address you on a question of democracy. It's an honor. I'm grateful for this honor conferred on me. Now, normally I'm not very fond of quoting. Some of the lawyers present here, I'm sure will bear me out. My judgments contained minimum number of quotations. I'm not very fond of quoting from XYZ, but unless it was really compelled because of the elegance of a statement or my own inability to create a statement which is as powerful as that is available already in something. Barring those occasions, I was not very fond of quoting. But I think this is an occasion. I would like to start this speech with a quotation. It is a quotation which influenced me greatly. A quotation which I heard some 50 years back from late Mr. Palkhiwala. Quoting from a textbook on the American Constitution, a commentary on the American Constitution by Joseph Story, a distinguished judge of the American Supreme Court of 1830s. He was hardly there for 4 years in the American Supreme Court. It's not the length of the time, but the scholarship of the man and the wisdom of the man which holds him out. He wrote a 4-volume commentary on the American Constitution. Concluding the commentary, he said this. I'll just read this one paragraph, forgive me. If these commentaries shall but inspire in the rising generation a more ardent love of their country, an unquenchable thirst for liberty, and a profound reverence for the Constitution and the Union, then they will have accomplished all that the author ought to desire. Let the American youth never forget that they possess a noble inheritance brought by the toils and sufferings and blood of their ancestors, and capable of wisely improved and faithfully guarded of transmitting to their last posterity all the substantial blessings of the faith, the peaceful enjoyment of liberty, property, religion, and independence. Now comes the most important thing. The structure has been erected by architects of consummate skill and fidelity. Its foundations are solid. Its compartments are beautiful as well as useful. Its arrangements are full of wisdom and order, and its defenses are impregnable from without. It has been reared for immortality. If the work of a man may justly aspire to such a title, it may nevertheless perish in an hour by the folly or corruption or negligence of its only keepers, the people. The people, republics are created by the virtue, public spirit, and intelligence of the citizens. They fall when the wise are banished from the public councils because they dare to be honest, and the profligate are rewarded because they flatter people in order to betray them. I suppose there can't be any grander or eloquent or a perfect caution in the context of preserving democracy. It contains all that is to be said about it. Actually, I can quote this and sit down, but unfortunately I can't do it. Point is, some 200 years after this was written, countries are still struggling to find out ways and means of protecting their democracies, rejuvenating them, preserving them, strengthening them. It's not peculiar to India. We have our own problems. These problems exist in every democratic, constitutional democratic country. These problems, it's an eternal struggle between power and people. It continues. When we talk about democracy and the role of the judiciary in preserving the democracy, first of all, let us have a very clear opinion about what we mean by the word democracy. It looks as if, at least I have a very uncomfortable feeling for the last maybe about at least 30-35 years. Before that I was much younger, maybe my ideas were not very clear and maybe I was not so politically conscious or aware. But at least last 30-40 years, I have an inconvenient feeling. Democracy in this country more or less has come to be understood as a periodic Tiruvila of elections. Once in 5 years we hold an election, and that's what we believe to be democracy. And those who are successful in the election believe that since people have given them the mandate, they don't remember that the mandate is valid only for 5 years. Since people have given them the mandate, that they can do whatever they like, and constitution means nothing further. That the constitution must be, of course, there were phases in the Indian history where it was pointed out what the legislature or the parliament was doing or the executive was doing was contrary to the constitution. Well, the elected representatives very quickly amended the constitution. Sometimes justified, sometimes perhaps not justified. These are all matters of opinion. I don't want to enter that controversy. In fact, I remember the whole controversy once again centered around Chennai and Mr. Kumar Mangalam, you remember, when after Goloknath's case. Goloknath's case was a controversial case. But then what happened thereafter, and those things, the argument that the parliament is sovereign, so many things happened. Point is this. This is become the understanding of at least the representatives of the people, by and large, notwithstanding honorable exceptions among them. And when it comes to the political parties, individual exceptions apart, this appears to be the understanding of almost every political party across the spectrum. Electoral victory confers legitimacy for whatever they do. The result is we have been watching what's all going on in the last 75 years of the existence of the Constitution. Now, what is then democracy in the context of Indian Constitution? It, in my view, has two compartments. One is an aspect of the Constitution which deals with the liberties of the people, their fundamental rights or various other liberties. There's some rights which are not fundamental. In fact, it's an unfortunate thing in this country. For long years, the Supreme Court and the High Courts have repeatedly said a right to vote is a statutory right. Starting from Ponuswamy, once again Tamil Nadu, Ponuswamy versus Namakkal, 1951, I think. The Supreme Court declared the right to vote, fundamental though it is to democracy, is still a statutory right. It is a fallacious argument. I may be forgiven for making that statement, but I can't help it. I said it on record in a judgment in the Supreme Court. When the Constitution, Article 326 states that anybody above the age of 21 years is entitled to vote subject to XYZ restrictions, the 21 years was reduced later, sometime in 1984, to 18 years. To believe the right to vote and all rights relating to election are statutory rights is an absolutely unconstitutional view. You have by the letter of the Constitution, it says every citizen of this country aged more than 21 years originally and 18 years later, unless he is otherwise disqualified on XYZ grounds, specific, not on whatever ground the Parliament or the state legislature believes, only specified grounds, is entitled to vote. And if the Parliament, if the Constitution says there shall be a periodic election to the Parliament and the state legislature once in 5 years or sooner dissolved, to say that these rights have no constitutional status, how would you get a Parliament without a right to vote? If nobody has a constitutional right to vote, how could a Parliament be constituted once in 5 years or a state legislature? This simple logic, unfortunately, the legal system missed over some 70 years. First time sometime in 2002, in PUCL matter, Justice Venkatram Reddy made a one-line statement that there is a constitution, he didn't elaborate unfortunately, there is a constitutional right to vote. And it fell to my lot later in a dissenting judgment, once again from Tamil Nadu. The political party, the caste title goes from a political party called DMDK from Tamil Nadu. It was fighting for an election symbol. Along with the first the lead case was DMDK. There are many other political parties from all over the country. They are fighting for allotment of a election symbol. Once again, all these arguments were advanced by the big lawyers of the Supreme Court, accepted by the majority members of the Supreme Court. Yes, nobody has a fundamental right, nobody has a constitutional right in the election matters, only statutory right. And the Election Commission says, if you people remember, how much of time do I get, gentlemen? Okay. Because depending on that, I'll have to regulate my. If you people remember, election symbols are allotted. Sorry.
Till you get tired again.
Okay. Oh. Okay. Now, election symbols are allotted. This whole arrangement of election symbols, I don't know how many of my friends examined it and remember it, the elder members remember it. It has no statutory basis. Sometime in 1953 or 54, the Election Commission called for an all-party meeting. Some 7 national parties, Congress, Undivided Communist Party those days, Communist Party, so on and so forth. 7 national parties were invited. As a matter of consensus arrived in the meeting, the Election Commission framed a regulation called Election Symbols Allotment Order. Now, which provided that any political party seeking a permanent election symbol must have contested at least one election and polled not less than 4% of the votes in that election. This number of 4% kept varying from time to time. I think latest is now 10 or 12%. I didn't check up the latest position. Now, then later an amendment was brought. You must poll not only a minimum percentage of the votes at the election, but must also secure some minimum number of seats. And hilariously, this particular political party, TMDK, I'm sure you remember it much better than me, you being from Tamil Nadu. The first election, that political party scored a little less than the prescribed percentage of voting. In the second election, there was some political arrangement between that party and another ADMK party. That party secured some 24-25 seats in the legislative assembly, but the vote percentage did not match with the requirement of the law. It didn't get a permanent seat. Next election, they secured the poll percentage, but number of seats went down. Still, they were not able to get it. In all this melee, they came to the court and said, we need a permanent election symbol. A lot of debate went on, various other political parties were there. The majority said, no, you don't have any constitutional right. I was a dissenter in it. And there was an earlier judgment of the Supreme Court when the old Janata Party, well, over a period of time, wore out. The Election Commission issued a notice to them to de-recognize them and remove their election symbol, that Halda, the one carrying a plough. That was the symbol of the Janata Party. And Mr. Subramanian Swamy, who was the president of that party at that point of time, he went to the Supreme Court. I mention the name because it is reported. He was the petition opponent of that matter. He went to the court. Then the Supreme Court said, well, we can't imagine a political party without following minimum number of voters. How can it be a political party, therefore you don't deserve? It was a very queer logic. In fact, I observed in my dissenting judgment, if numbers are the only test for political relevance and democracy, Hitler was a great Democrat. He won with a thumping majority in that election. So therefore, I think there was something more independent and a more rational way of looking at these things. That's what I wrote anyway, mine was a majority opinion. Later I got an opportunity in another matter. it became a majority opinion of 2 judges. I don't know how long it will continue. At least as of today, the Supreme Court's view as penned by me, because it is a majority view, it becomes the Supreme Court view, that there is a constitutional right to vote and participate in elections. Point is, when we are talking about if our whole system, the legal system, starts with such a flawed understanding of democracy, and it takes some 70, even today there is no guarantee. It was a judgment of 2 judges. Another 5 judges or 3 judges tomorrow may disagree with that judgment. The whole system is such. The division benches sitting in the Supreme Court. Well, I don't know how long that. Obviously, the judgment didn't really trouble many people. Therefore, nobody asked for a review of the judgment. But I don't know how long will the judgment survive. But at least logically, you can sit here in a place like this in an academic discussion. If our whole understanding of a democracy and constitution in the context of democracy starts with such a fundamental flaw, well, a lot more vigilance is required, a lot more deliberation is required, a lot more public opinion to influence those who are responsible for making these decisions. Influence not in the private sense of it, public opinion. Public opinion is, as I said, that's why I opened with that quote. The only keepers are the people, keepers of the constitution. It is the public opinion of the people, overwhelming opinion, that controls all these institutions and shapes their views. Now, majority opinions need not always be right. A classic example given to say that majority opinions need not always be right is the killing of Socrates. And Socrates was condemned to death. It was not an individual judge like Charameshwar XYZ who gave that punishment. The entire city of Athens gathered, like your modern Taliban, where the whole place, all people gather, found that this man is propagating dangerous views and therefore must be killed. It was the most democratic because all the people, not a 1 judge, 2 judge appointed, chosen by this party, that party, it was not. All the people of Athens city gathered and condemned him to. In that sense, it was a very democratic judgment. But the point is, was it a good judgment? Was it a liberal judgment? Is there something more than the mere numbers in a democracy? That's the question. So, some rationality in the process, that is a requirement apart from the numbers. Now anyway, we will not go into that aspect now, it will take too much of time. That's where the whole flaw started. And no wonder, if there is a view of the Supreme Court from 1950, from Kodaswamy versus Namakkal till 2013 or 14, no wonder political parties cutting across the spectrum believe that an electoral victory confers the right to do whatever they like. Beyond that, there is no check. And then there is some amount of, some amount of hesitation to accept that there can be some higher constitutional principles which still regulate the democratic governments. Well, people suspect it. No, we got the majority, we can do whatever we like. Somebody was mentioning some time back in Tamil, referring to a particular judge who made some statement recently about majorities. That appears to be the average understanding of people in this country, politicians, judges, everybody. Then what happens? The public opinion. Unfortunately, coming to the public opinion, this country still has some 50% of the population, exact number I don't remember, we can check out. 50% of the people who are formally illiterate. Some of them are, though formally illiterate, they are more intelligent than most of us. The so-called literates and intellectuals, they exercise their franchise very wisely. And the point is, the whole system continues like this. Then, how do we get these electoral majorities is the next problem. The constitution prohibits certain things. The law dealing with elections prohibits certain things. For example, bribery, procuring votes with money is prohibited strictly under the Representation of the People Act. And all of us know what happens in an election. If somebody pretends that they do not know, I'll tell you. A few years back in Delhi, when I was still in office, there was an occasion like this. About 100 people gathered to debate about certain aspects of there is a place called the Constitution, like your IOA, there is a place called Constitution Club in Delhi. There are about 100 people gathered, and each one of them was somebody who was either holding or had held in the past an important constitutional position in this country. Judges, retired judges, election commissioners, former election commissioners, senior bureaucrats, all of these people were there. A former chief election commissioner, Mr. Brahma, if you remember that name, he was chief election commissioner sometime around 2010. He's a gentleman, has an office, IAS office from northeastern part of the country, who belonged to the undivided Andhra cadre. Now that state itself was gone into two pieces. I knew Mr. Brahma when he was the commissioner of Hyderabad municipality and so on. Then later, eventually, he became the chief election commissioner. By the time of this meeting, which I was mentioning about, Mr. Brahma had ceased to hold any public office. He was a retired gentleman relaxing in Delhi. He came. He was also there. He made a statement. This was in around 2014 or 15, exact year, I don't remember, about a decade back. Maybe after 14, because an election had just taken place, 14 election was there. He made a statement. People are spending about 50 crores to become members of the parliament. All the people gathered in the hall smiled. Mind you, it is not an irresponsible statement by a wayfarer not knowing anything about the system. The man who had been the chief election commissioner. All of us know exact figures, we do not know how much each candidate spent, but we have a rough estimate. There is circulation in news. The man said 50 crores. People smiled. When my turn came, I said, this is the problem in the country. We are willing to smile it away, it's too serious a matter. I don't know how many of you remember, Mr. Prasad, at least you must be remembering. Late Mr. Rajagopalachari published a series of articles those days saying, save democracy from money power. Do you remember that? Later it was published in the form of a book by Bhavans. See, this problem was, brilliant man he was. Those days, maybe they were spending more than the permissible limits, but then the limits were very minimal and even the expenditure was minimal. And then 50 crores and 100 crores is something. Late Mr. Rajagopalachari must be turning in his grave today when he hears these things. Now, we are not able to handle this situation. And then what is the role of judiciary in this is a different story. Also, the judiciary's role in this matter is limited. Unless somebody brings a proper election petition, nothing can be done. Even an election petition is filed in the system, how many years it would take. In fact, just the other day I was in Kerala, 1 week back. The honorable member of the parliament was there. There was a conversation between him and me. Then the invariable accusation that matters are pending in the courts for long years, they don't get resolved. What do you say? I am supposed to be having a solution for all the problems haunting the Indian judiciary because I committed a mistake of holding a press conference. Everybody thinks I have an answer for everything. But anyway, he raised that question. Then I asked him, Mr. So-and-so, obviously I am not mentioning the name, he is a member of the Rajya Sabha. Mr. So-and-so, to my knowledge, there must be a couple of hundreds of cases, criminal cases, against elected representatives at various levels, state level, central level, in this country pending in the Supreme Court. I don't want to mention the names, all of you know who they are. Why don't you raise this question in the Parliament and let the Parliament pass a resolution asking the Chief Justice of India to constitute a special bench exclusively to hear these matters? Everybody clapped and laughed and went off and nothing happened thereafter, and I don't think anything will happen. The point is this: all of us are willing to accuse the others. Are we doing something which we have to do is the question. This is the problem with the system. It requires a serious debate as to how to improve the system. Nobody is interested in that debate. People are interested in the next day's headlines of the newspaper. I held a press conference that became a news for the last 10 years. Wherever I go, people talk about my press conference. But point is, what happened thereafter? Did anything happen? Was there any follow-up? When I held the press conference sitting with my colleagues, I said, we owe a duty to the nation. But unfortunately, the nation didn't react. It didn't ask for any correction. It didn't launch the necessary democratic pressure on the system for a correction. Then how will it get rectified? When a few of us sit in a closed hall like this, lament about what's going on, but by itself it is okay. Even if this is not done, it will be still worse. But beyond this, nothing, no serious debate takes place in this country. When we come to the other aspect of the democracy about the liberties of the people, they are constitutionally guaranteed liberties, text of the Constitution. Guarantees as fundamental right, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of trade and commerce, freedom of association, freedom of assembly, so on and so forth. I don't want to go into each one of these categories. Life and liberty, Article 21. What does the Constitution say? No person shall be deprived of his life or liberty, save by authority of law. For a long time, for 2 decades in this country, from 1950, once again the problem starts with strictly may not be Tamil Nadu, South India, A.K. Gopal or Vijay Rao. For 20 years, till 1970, until Justice Krishna wrote Maneka Gandhi's judgment, they said there is a law. The Parliament or the concerned state legislature makes a law that's good enough to deprive a person of his life or liberty, irrespective of the fact whether the law is rational or irrational, whether it has any very good basis, good quote unquote, good basis in that. Whether the Supreme Court's consistent view is Article 14 and 19 have no place in so far as 21. 21, you only look to the law part of it, only 21. It took 20 years for the Supreme Court to reconsider the matter and said no. It's not only there should be an authority of law, but law should also be, in substance, I'm not going into the nuances of the judgment. In substance, the Supreme Court said the law must also be rational law. It must stand the test of Article 14. Arbitrariness, so on and so forth. March goes on, there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing happens overnight. The so-called mature democracies like, US. Well, it took 200 years. In fact, interestingly, I think some 10 years after Indian Supreme Court had the first woman judge, the American Supreme Court had. It didn't have a woman judge in the Supreme Court until India was the first. No, that doesn't solve the whole problem, but I'm just mentioning as a matter of historical facts. It's a process, eternal process, it goes on like this. The point is, if with that kind of an understanding, then Justice Iyer came and made a grand declaration. Bail is the rule and jail is an exception. For about 10, 12 years, like mantra, almost every second judgment, this was quoted. Now, over a period of time in the last few years, we have come to a situation where bail appears to be an exception and jail appears to be a rule. Under trial prisoners, for a long number of years, they languish in these prisons. After 10 years, the trial is concluded and the man is declared innocent. His 10 years life is gone. Nobody compensates. Of course, that life can never be compensated. Even monetary compensation for the loss is not given. All the emotional problems and so on, that nobody can compensate them. That's a different story. Now, why is it happening? Kindly look at it. Those of you who had endured the emergency, not obviously youngsters would not have endured it, they might have read it through this thing. Detaining people without a proper charge and preventive detention was a regular feature, starting from Vijayraw's case onwards. For long years, there was a debate in the courts of this country to what extent this preventive detention is. The Constitution authorizes preventive detention by its letter, but every authority need not be used. How rationally that authority is used was the debate. Now, of late, if you notice in the country, anyway, I am not talking about this state, this government, that government, party, nothing. I am not talking about these things. I am not entering party politics. It is a factual phenomenon. Very rarely preventive detention is invoked nowadays. The best way is make a dirty allegation against somebody that he is a drug peddler or something like that, some dirty allegation where even people will not dare to say, oh, no, this is not right, this man can't be arrested. Make such an allegation, charge him, arrest him, afterwards getting bail is impossible. Everybody is worried whether to grant bail to that this kind of an accused or not. People languish in jails for years together. This is a little high-profile personalities. Take about a common man. We are more actually, our whole emphasis all over the country in the debate for the last 50, 60 years, we talk about the Supreme Court and the role played by the Supreme Court and High Courts. We, as a nation, we are missing the point. The debate should be more about the judiciary at the district level and subordinate district level. How many cases are pending? How many cases dealing with liberty? How many criminal cases? How many people are languishing in jails? Whether they are able to access the system of justice? What kind of a... I'll give you one example here. This in fact was the last judgment which I penned in my career. Maybe on the 17th or 18th of May, just one day before. My actual retirement was 22nd June, but then 18th was my last sitting day. Afterward, the Supreme Court was on summer vacation. I'm not mentioning about this judgment because I wrote it. I'm not on that. The facts are telling and they help to understand the situation. Therefore, I'm mentioning it. It was a criminal case where 3 people died in some remote place, town in Ahmedabad, in Gujarat. Nothing to do with religion or the local political problems, local factions. No religion, no nothing of those overtones were there. There was a faction fight, 2 groups of people fought. 3 people died. 5, 6 people were injured on both the sides. These 3 people who died belonged to one group. And even from the aggressor side, a few people were injured, nobody died. Then this incident took place sometime in 1989 or so, 87 or 89. You can check up, it's a reported judgment. Some Ranchhod Bhai, something, state of Gujarat, just check up. Now, 3 people died. 1989 to 2018, by the time the matter reached the Supreme Court, 98, 2008, to the 30 years, full 30 years it took. This case had all the infirmities we can think of in the implementation of criminal law in this country. At least advocate friends are here. And even otherwise, you not necessarily be an advocate to understand things. And I'm sure some students of law are also here. Charges, an omnibus charge was framed. 17 people were accused in the case of the death of these 3 people. In criminal law, at least what I have known, the criminal law as I know it, the charge must be precise. Okay, if police believe all these 17 people are responsible for causing the death of these 3 people, it must say so, saying that you so and so and so, the old Madras tradition which is followed by Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, all these places. When a charge is framed, it specifically mentions you so and so X, Y, Z, you on so and so date, with a knife or axe or a gun or whatever it is, he inflicted injury on so and so car resulting in his death. This should be the charge. And if there are 3 dead bodies, 3 separate charges must be framed. And if convicted, for all the 3, those 3 people will be convicted thrice over. Whether the sentences should run concurrently or not is a different question. But at least conviction should go on 3 counts. In a matter like this, the trial court framed an omnibus charge, 17 people. You so and so, so and so, so and so are accused under section so and so 120, 143, 144, 147, 149, 307, all kinds of things. No specific charge. Finally, of the 17 people, of course, it's a different story. 2 people escaped. This trial was separated. Forget about those things. 15 people were put to trial. Of the 15, 2 people were held guilty of the offence of murder. 302, old 302, now numbers have changed with the recent amendment when the new laws have been made. There's nothing new about it. Anyway, only label changed, numbers changed. 2 people were found guilty of offences in the 302. Neither the trial court judgment nor the high court judgment specifies 302 for killing whom. There are 3 dead bodies. For killing whom? Simple record, these 2 are found guilty of 302. And interestingly, maybe gentlemen, you are a lawyer, you are smiling. There is something called a postmortem report in a case of death. With reference to one of the dead bodies, even the postmortem report is not on record, it was not exhibited. Who knows whether he died a natural death or unnatural death? God alone knows, legal system. Now, what we read in the newspapers and our own understanding we see in the road is a different thing. When you go to the court, the judge doesn't see who killed whom. Unless somebody puts it on record, some evidence comes forward, the judge can't do anything about it. Postmortem report was not marked with reference to one body. Then these 2 people were found guilty of 302, of whom God alone knows. If you believe in God. If you don't believe in God, much better. Nobody knows. Now, and with all these shortcomings, I was shocked to see this judgment. I was left with about one working week, then I was in a hurry to complete. And some youngster was appearing. Youngsters are good, but when the pressure in a short time I had to decide the matter. One of the retired judges from Madras, who was practicing there, was good at criminal law. I don't want to mention the name. He must be known. So he was sitting in the court hall. I requested him, gentlemen, please help me. Just prepare a note on this matter. Go through the case because the youngster will take time to understand. Now, finally I had to come to a conclusion. The whole thing is misconducted. Trial charge itself was not properly framed. Nothing. Postmortem report is not there. And those people are entitled for an acquittal. Interesting fact is, During the pendency of the appeal, generally, once the 302 somebody is convicted, Madras High Court, any High Court, pending appeal 302, nobody, no judge grants bail, not today, even from the beginning, from the days of Rajmanar, bail was not granted pending appeal, 302 conviction. These two fellows served out their sentences, they were out already. Ordering a retrial will not help them because their 14 years are over, gone in the jail. Plus, even for the sake of system and theory, if a retrial were to be ordered, you don't know how many of those witnesses were still alive. And what is the value of their evidence today if it is recorded after 30 years? What would be the value of that evidence? Lawyers know it is useless because memory fades. This case has all the shortcomings not in the law, in the implementation of the law. What kind of efficient or inefficient system we have, what kind of an efficient investigating agencies we have, what kind of efficient prosecuting agencies, public prosecutors are there, what kind of judges are there. I'm sorry to say this. The district did not frame the charges. At least the High Court should have pointed out. Nothing happened. No. Question is one of efficiency. You don't take things serious. Making a speech like this once in a way here and there doesn't help. For writing the judgment itself, I don't think helped anybody. How many more cases at the efficiency levels? All this results in what? Absolute public frustration and loss of faith in the system as such. I am making this statement with some responsibility, gentlemen. I will give you two illustrations for this on record. A few years back, I am sure these things must be happening all over the world. These are known to me, therefore I am telling you. There was an incident of acid throwing on the face of a girl in Warangal town some 10-12 years back when I was Chief Justice Bhavati. A couple of days later, a couple of youngsters were arrested. They were produced before the magistrate, ordered remand. On the way to the remand, both these youngsters were shot to death by the police. The usual story that they tried to escape the custody and they tried to grab our weapons and therefore we had to fight and kill. After this incident, there were huge processions in Warangal town by public students' associations, parents' associations, congratulating the police. And I saw in the TV sitting in Gauhati, an advocate in Warangal was interviewed by one of those TV members. That gentleman, I'm shocked, of course, I don't blame him. I'm shocked. He said, what is there? I know how long it will take in the system. For 30 years, these fellows will be on bail, nothing will happen. Police did the right thing. This is the frustration of the civil society. And it didn't stop there. Just 3-4 years after my retirement, 3-4 years back in Hyderabad city, a young girl returning from working woman, returning from office late in the night around 10 o'clock, outskirts of the city, is raped, killed, the blood of the body. Very heinous thing. The blood boils to hear these things. But the point is this, we're talking about constitutional systems. 4 boys were caught. Same story, they were produced before the magistrate. On the way back, they were shot to death. Once again, the same processions and congratulatory messages. In fact, this time there was an improvement. Huge garlands were taken to the police officers who were involved in the encounter. I am not on the individual officers or people. I understand people and their agony. But why is it happening? Because the system is inefficient. Everybody says, well, nothing happens for 30 years, 20 years, this will go on like this. So therefore, but point is, if we allow this, none of us is safe. Tomorrow morning, the police officer next to your residence is not happy with you. He'll foist a case against you and simply shoot you down. Instead of improving this efficiency of the system, making efforts to improve the efficiency of the system, we find these shortcuts. It's nothing to do with the constitution, nothing to do with the rule of law, nothing to do with the implementation of the law, nothing to do with democracy and the safety of the people. Just one more example I'll give you. I was a young judge in Andhra Pradesh, 97, 98, something like that. I was sitting in writ admissions. From a particular, all of you know Andhra Pradesh, after we were together in 1953. Guntur district. Series of writ petitions, every day average 2 writ petitions used to come before me for writ admissions. What is the nature of the petitions? Wife and husband quarrel. Wife goes to the police station, complains against the husband. Police take the fellow to the police station and you know what happens thereafter. Brothers quarrel over answers to property. One fellow goes to the police station, other fellow is dragged. Landlord and tenant quarrel, saying the tenant is not paying the rent. Landlord goes to, this kind of thing. And then invariably in all these cases, police were interfering. People were coming to the High Court saying that, see, if the landlord, the tenant does not pay rent, it's a civil dispute as per the law, we know. Want to make it a crime tomorrow, please amend the law, make it a crime, that's a different story. Whether that can stand the test of constitution or not, I will not go into at this stage. As of now, it's not a crime. He'll have to be evicted in accordance with the law. But then that takes 30 years. So therefore they go to the police. These kind of cases were coming. And invariably, the High Court was saying, please do not, in every case, don't interfere with the civil dispute state. Then, one day, a contempt case came. In Tenali town, somebody built a row of shops. In Hyderabad, the language they are called Malgis. What is it? Those row shops. Somebody. Another case. In Hyderabad they called Malgis. So one of those shops, there was a tenant. Obviously he was not paying rent or whatever was the problem, he was not paying rent. So the landlord went and complained to the police. The police called the tenant, said, why are you not paying? That fellow rushed to the High Court saying that it is a civil dispute, the police are calling me, please prohibit the police from interfering in the matter. We granted stay, yes, police have no business to deal with this matter, stay. Then a week later, contempt case came. What is the contempt? A week, this fellow took the interim order, showed it to the police station, okay, I got an order from the court, don't come to me anymore, my Malgi. Police smiled and said, very good, will not. And a couple of days thereafter, one midnight, the shop next to it, row shops owned by the same owner, was vacant. The owner found a brilliant way of doing it. He made a hole in the common wall between this shop and the next vacant shop. He threw out all the merchandise lying in this shop. And somebody in the locality ran to the tenant and told, look here, all your merchandise is being thrown out. So he ran to the police station. This is what he stated on affidavit. He ran to the police station and the police said, yes, you go to the High Court, you went to the High Court earlier, now also you go and tell the High Court. So he came and filed a contempt case. Now, then I was dazed at the whole thing. So normal notice was issued, some inspector came, he filed an affidavit, no, nothing of that kind happened. He never came and informed me, otherwise I would have immediately gone and taken action. This man never came and reported me. All kinds of affidavits are filed. I realized it's not going to settle this way. I said, summon the superintendent of police. When you summon a senior officer, things fall in order. Still, a few days later, we don't know if we continue with the same level of efficiency at every level, including the High Courts and Supreme Courts, whether things will happen or not, I don't know. The officer came. Oh, he also supported the inspector, sir. He says he didn't receive any complaint, therefore he didn't go. But to the misfortune of the officers, I was government pleader at home for some time. I was additional advocate general in charge of the home department sometime later. I knew something about the policing system. In any town or city, night patrol would be there. I'm sure most of the systems are borrowed from old Madras province in Andhra also. Night patrolling will be there. How efficiently they patrol is a different matter, but night patrol. I have known officers personally, senior level, SP level officers, who went around Hyderabad city in night patrol. Once in a week, twice in a week, they used to go, apart from the other officers going. So I knew this. Then I asked the gentleman, Mister, I used to remember that there used to be night patrolling. Is the practice continuing or abandoned? And the superintendent said, sir, we are continuing the system. And I said, okay, this man didn't come and complain. In the night, in a town, Telangana town, in the marketplace, somebody makes a hole in the wall. What will you, at least, if not that day, next morning at least your people should have known. What did you do about it? He cut a blank. So then I wrote a long order describing the whole thing and said action should be taken against this officer. But then I told him, Mister, I will not sign this order for 4 days. If things fall in order in your district, I will not pass this order. I will not sign it, but some modified version. It may not really damage you. So, and I told him, the only saving grace in this case is there are no allegations of personal corruption against you, therefore I am giving this opportunity. That man saluted and left. From next day the flood stopped. No more repetitions to the High Court on these matters. It is not the end of the story. A few days, a couple of months later, this officer was transferred to Hyderabad in the normal course, routine administrative transfer. And then we met in a wedding. So the High Court judge naturally, some priority is given, front row, made to sit. This officer came, saluted. The next seat was vacant. He said, sir, may I take? I said, most welcome. I am neither a judge nor a police officer. It is a wedding here. Sit down. He sat. And then after a few seconds, sir, can I tell you something? I was also young. Even this officer was hardly in 30s. I was in 40s, mid 40s. I told him, if what you are going to say is not about a pending case before me, yes, you can talk. He said, no, sir, it's not. I know that much that I will not talk to you about a pending case. But tell me what's. He told me, sir, there were 32,000 representations before me in Guntur district asking for intervention by the police. 32,000 petitions, I still remember the number. He made the statement, stood up, made a stiff police salute, walked off. The message was very clear to me. Obviously, people are losing faith in the judicial system. Not because we are bad people. Painfully slow process. If you want to get rid of a defaulting tenant, it will take years. If you want to fight a maintenance case, wife wants to fight a maintenance case, God alone knows how many years it takes. Barring last week I received an interesting WhatsApp message. A particular film star was arrested in Hyderabad in the context of, I'm sure you must have seen it in the papers and all. Then he was arrested, produced, and bail was moved. One day he was in jail, next day he came out. I am not only questioning who is right, who is wrong, I am not going into it at all. It's not my purpose. Next morning somebody sent me I'm sure they must have sent it to many people, to me also, WhatsApp. So and so, arrested, charged, produced before the magistrate, released on bail in 24 hours. Who says the justice delivery system is slow in this country? The only thing is that you are poor. That was the message. That was the WhatsApp message. The point is, when you are talking about the role of the judiciary, democracy, protection of democracy. See, these hi-fi lectures about, not that they are less important issues, but how it affects the people is a question. There are serious constitutional issues and political issues. People kept on debating whether Ayodhya judgment was right or wrong. Well, views are there, I don't want to go into it. Jammu Kashmir, what happened? Sir, we are worried about the man next door. If he is going to jail, how long will it take for him to come out? That's also a constitutional process. Democracy means protecting the weaker people, poor people, and those who are helpless. If you have resources, you have money, political power, political support, well, things happen. Somehow or other they happen. But those who do not have any one of these things, for them the constitution is meant. In a properly organized constitutional governance in a democratic society, they can only look to the judiciary. They can't look to a minister or a chief secretary or a DGP or somebody like that. They can look to the court, go to the nearest magistrate, say that my problem is this. I think I've been telling people who is inviting me up late. People talk to me about what happened. The other day I went, the gentleman asked, is it right that the Chief Justice should invite the Prime Minister for puja? I said, let's not go into this, I'm not worried about it. I'm more worried about these things. What happened to my neighbor who went to jail 6 months back? Why is he not coming out? Pending trial. He's convicted, that's a different story. Pending trial. I have known people who are languished in jail for years together. Because they are just poor, they can't afford the system. Talk about the Supreme Court and the role of the Supreme Court. Who can afford the litigation in the Supreme Court? What is the fee structure of the Supreme Court senior advocates nowadays? My friends, advocate friends know, no common man in this country can afford that litigation. They can go to the magistrate, they can go to the district judge, maybe up to the High Court. Some nice gentleman like Prasad may, in the appropriate case, may reduce his fee or do it free. That's a different thing. But Supreme Court, it's just impossible. The sheer distance, you're assuming that there's a nice gentleman who's willing to do your case free. Traveling to Delhi from here, and how much of expenditure would it involve? The travel costs, stay there. Don't bother about that much, bother about more. And the only way we can strengthen the democracy, we can make the democracy more functional, is improving the efficiency of the judiciary, at least up to the state level. There are some problems which are not relevant, just incidentally I'll mention. Tamil Nadu Municipal Engineering Service, whether Charameshwar is senior in the service or Mr. Engineer Prasad is senior, how is the nation worried about it? It is a dispute between both of them. High Court should be the last court. But since they have the money, they go up to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court is ready to entertain. I am not saying it for the first time. I said it on record. I had the privilege of delivering late H.R. Khanna Memorial Lecture sometime in 2015 or 16 in Delhi. I said it that day. It's on record, reported. Let's be more practical about it. What we need is improving the efficiency of the judiciary, at least at this level. And it can be done only by us, those of us who are lawyers, those of us who are working as judicial officers. Try to improve the efficiency, try to be, okay, you collect your fee, reasonable fee, not the astronomical fee which the Delhi laws collect, fee, but do an efficient service. That's the only way you can protect the constitution and the liberties granted or recognized. I don't even say constitution granted, liberties are inherent in human beings, recognized by the constitution. That's the only way to protect it. I have a wonderful, fantastic judgment about the Judicial Appointments Commission. I was a dissenting judgment, of course, a lot of things happened. A grand lecture was given about the independence of the judiciary by majority in that matter. And what happened to the appointment system thereafter. At least those discerning people know what happened in this country to that independence. That we can't handle anyway at this stage. Let us handle it at our level. The only way to get the constitution and its values implemented for 99% of the people in this country is in the hands of the subordinate judiciary. That 1%, whether XYZ gentleman who borrowed thousands of crores from the banks and jumped the jurisdiction, whether he should be extradited, what are the nuances of the law of extradition, whether he has fundamental rights here, no, well, let the Supreme Court decide it. Let us bother about these things. I think I'm grateful to all of you for the patient hearing given to me. Though, as a judge, people used to thank me for a patient hearing whenever I gave a patient hearing. Today it's my responsibility to thank you for a patient hearing, and I'm really happy to be here this evening. Thank you.